Welcome to Shelf Pantry Recipe Day. This occurs on the first Tuesday of every month. And a bunch of us channels get together and you can see everybody's name down below. And we try to whip up a fantastic recipe for you. Be it a side dish, a main dish, breakfast, dessert, whatever it is, it has to be made with shelf-stable ingredients. And we're all having a lot of fun doing this. And I want to welcome two new channels to the shelf-stable collaboration. And that is Casey from Ormsby Farm and Renee from the Pike Creek Farm. Our goal is that you have a complete recipe book by the time we're done with this collaboration that you can use for inspiration when you want to know, what can I cook from my pantry? And this would come in really handy too for emergency preparedness. Now, if you want a front sheet like this, it's available in the links below or in the pinned comment. Also, all of us include our recipe either below in the description or by a link. Well, today we are going to make the basis that you can use for Navajo tacos, or what I always heard referred to as Indian fry bread. I never heard it referred to as Native American fry bread. So I'm going to call it Indian fry bread, and I don't mean any insults to anybody. That's just what I think most people know it by. Now, this kind of has an interesting history. You know, when the American government shoved Native Americans off their own land and into reservations, they gave them rations. And part of those rations were powdered milk, lard, salt, and flour. So Native Americans had to be creative. This was something they didn't usually eat, but they figured out a way to make bread with it. And we call that today Indian fry bread. And it is crispy. It is made with just a few ingredients, which is why it's so great for a pantry recipe. And you can use it to make a main dish or to make a really great dessert. Now, interestingly enough, when I was researching the recipes, I noticed that some include yeast and some don't. And then I learned that on reservations in South Dakota, they were also given yeast. So those recipes include yeast. But those reservations down, like let's say in Oklahoma, weren't given yeast. So those recipes don't include yeast. And I decided to use a recipe that didn't include yeast because that's even a better shelf-stable recipe. What I love about this recipe is you can use it to make Navajo tacos, or you can use it as kind of a sandwich bread, or you could use it for breakfast and slather it with strawberry jam. Or my favorite way of making it with a dessert is slathered with butter and a little sugar and cinnamon, and oh, it's so good. It's very much like an elephant ear, or for our friends up in Canada, I think they call it a beaver tail. So let's look at what the ingredients are. So our ingredients are simple, and I bet you have them in your pantry. We're going to need a cup of flour, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon powdered milk, 1 teaspoon baking powder, and 1/2 cup water, and vegetable oil for frying. Get started. Now we have 1 cup flour, and then we have our baking powder, our milk powder, and our salt. Let's mix this up well. I think that's pretty good. Now we're going to add our water. Just going to add a little at a time. mix it up well. It's starting to go doughy. I think we can use the whole half cup. We want to mix in the loose flour. It's going to be sticky. Okay. This recipe can get sticky. Always put flour on your hands. You want the dough to be a little sticky, but you don't want it all stuck all over your hands. And I'm going to pour it out, but first I want to put some. Flour your surface. Then we're going to pour it out. Then we're just kind of squeezing it up. Okay? We're not trying to knead it. We're not trying to mix it well. We're just trying to get it here. Remember how I said there's different ways people make this? Well, some people knead it, the dough. Now, I always thought if you did that, it releases more gluten and you might have more of a tough dough. So, I don't knead it. Okay, now some people, even if there isn't yeast in the dough, actually let the dough, they roll it in a ball, and they let it set with plastic wrap on top for 2 hours before they make it, or 5 minutes. I mean, the recipes are every which way. I don't really think that's necessary, so we're going to skip that. Now we're going to want to cut it in fourths. So just take our butter knife here. And let me check on the oil. Now for this recipe, you should heat your oil until it's 350 degrees. And you want at least an inch of oil in a very heavy duty pan. Cast iron is great for this. Just make sure it's deep enough so you didn't get oil splattered all over your stove top. Let's get one of these ready. Okay, we're gonna just pick up one. Again, have some flour on your hands. This is sticky dough. Now, we just kind of wanna, right? Just kind of pushing it out. And you could use a rolling pin to flatten this or stretch it with your fingers. I'm just patting it down with my hand. You know, the thinner you get these, the better. Place this in the oil. Whoa, let that go. Maybe about 3 minutes each side. Want it nice and brown. Okay. Press this down a bit. Now, if you don't want to make the dough, I can give you a quick hack, I guess. You can get the Pillsbury refrigerated biscuits, you know, the grand biscuits, and you take them, pat them down flat, and throw them in the oil at 350 degrees. It will taste just great also, and saves you the mess of making the dough, and if you're like me, getting flour all over yourself in the countertop. I'm going to flip it over. I think I am. I just don't want it to splatter just in there. There we go. When you take your fry bread out of the oil, place it on a paper plate that has a piece of paper towel on it. That way it will absorb some of that oil. Okay, this one's done. Okay. Place it on plate here, let it drain. There we go. Oops. don't wait too long to eat this bread. You want to eat it when it's nice and warm and crispy. That's when it tastes best. Now, of course, you can use taco meat. You could use shredded pork. That would be good. I have some leftover chili that I made. Now, you want to drain it because you don't want a lot of sauce, because that would make your fry bread soggy. There we go. Okay. Probably take our fry bread off our, there we go. And then let's add just a little red pepper flakes. And top it with a little cheese. There we go. Another thing that would be great in this fry bread is to use chipotle beef, and I have a video of canning it, and that stuff is so good, and it would taste delicious on a piece of fry bread. Now with your fry bread, it's not something you can easily bend, you know, and eat, so you're going to want to cut in to eat it. Hear that crispy crunch? See? Nice and crunchy. Look inside. Okay, let's do our taste test. Oh, I'm using my fingers here, but let's take a taste. Nice and crunchy. Doesn't that look good? And this is filling too. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have made it even thinner. We're gonna make this one more of a dessert. Put on some melted butter, or of course you can use ghee. Then shake on some cinnamon sugar. Okay, there you go. Let that sit a minute. Smothered with butter and then cinnamon and sugar. Doesn't that look good? Then what about a dessert one? Oh, this is so good. You know, this is meaty, this is filling, but this is pleasure on a plate. It's so good. Well, I hope you found this video illuminating, and if you haven't made fried bread before, you try it. You know, this is great in an emergency and you don't have any bread, you can still make something that is bread and is satisfying for your family. So it's a great recipe to master. So I hope you're watching every single shelf-stable pantry recipe published today, and I hope you're printing them out in your binder. Thank you so much for watching. And I gotta ask, have you made Indian fry bread before? If so, comment below. Do you add yeast? Do you knead it? Do you let it rest for 2 hours? How do you make Indian fry bread? Thank you.